Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the SLAT analysis session. So, today, finally, the exam got over. No doubt, I can see a lot of chat right now, people talking about uh, others indulging into unfair means, actually. So, before I start the session, this may sound as a consolation to all of you, but those who are really worried about people using unfair means, I would say don't worry about that. You have given your best shot. You gave your exam. You did well. So what you should be focusing right now is to prepare for the personal interview. Start collecting data. Work on your current affairs because they'll definitely have questions. In fact, it would be better if you revise your academics as well because the subjects you studied in class 11th and 12th, particularly 12th, because you can expect at least a couple of questions coming from your academic background actually. So that would be my advice, though it may sound like a consolation as I said, but uh, you did your job, you did your best job out there actually. So you have done your paper, you have given the paper already in three different slots. Some of you gave it on 26, some of you gave it yesterday, and some today actually. So all you should be worried right now is the other exams, the ILET and CLAT, which are supposed to be happening in August, though there is already a speculation right there uh, about the ILET examination. But today, let's concentrate on the SLAT analysis. So let me quickly take you through the journey of SLAT 2020, what happened, how each of these sections were stacked, and yes, definitely I'll be giving you expected cutoffs. I'm sure all of you are anxious about it. All of you are waiting for it actually. So I'll be doing that and I'll definitely take up question answer round at the end of the session. So nothing to worry about. So don't worry at all. So we'll be covering every aspect of it and definitely I'm coming out with the expected cutoffs. So 3 days of examination for the first time because of the pandemic. The exam was conducted in a very different format. So there were few delays and postponements which happened in the last 2 months. But finally, the exam was conducted over a period of 3 days. Uh, yes, there were technical issues. Quite a number of people faced technical issues. Actually, some could not start. In fact, there are few students who could not even take the test actually because all throughout the session they could not even connect with the help desk actually. So I'm sure something would be done for them. I'm sure Symbiosis will take note of that and definitely arrange something for them actually. But finally, it's a Symbiosis call actually. So let's wait and watch what happens. So couple of instances where each day I would say there were technical glitches, technical issues. Students could not start paper on time actually. But overall, if I have to assess the entire process, I think more or less it was smooth. Debate can continue whether the unfair means were used by the candidates or not. But overall, if I look at the conduct of the examination, the way it was conducted, I think much better as compared to some other examinations done in the same mode actually. So hats off to Symbiosis to pull it off actually. I'm sure they'll address the concerns of the students regarding the unfair means and everything. Prior to starting this session, I was reading a very detailed article on Legally India about the conduct of the Symbiosis examination, how people are bragging about using unfair means actually. But I'm sure Symbiosis and the and the authorities conducting the examination, the technical team conducting the examination, will take care of everything actually. So overall, 3 days of examination. Similar kind of paper, not exactly in terms of the questions, that wasn't possible in fact if you are expecting that, but more or less the difficulty level of paper was similar all across. So we couldn't I couldn't see a variation across the 3 days actually. More or less it was very similar actually in terms of difficulty level. The way the test was conducted, there were no issues. So quickly summing up the pattern of the examination, all we know is because of the pandemic situation and the exam being conducted in the home proctored format, the number of questions were proportionately reduced, and similarly the time was reduced. So as against 150 questions earlier, the total number of questions became 75 this year, and 75 minutes was given to each of the candidate to attempt the paper. Each section had 15 questions, so there was a balance among each of these sections actually, I would say. So, and one unique aspect of the examination was the written ability test, which is generally conducted as a offline exercise once the exams used to get over and you were called to the different campuses based on the calls you had received after the cutoffs. But this time VAT has been integrated along with the MCQ paper. So post your 75 minutes got over, you were supposed to take the writing ability test. So, or the written ability test actually. And I think if I look at the topics which were asked across the 3 days, that should not be a concern for majority of you actually. The familiar topics, you have been preparing for law entrances. Some of the topics in general you would have definitely covered. You prepare for current affairs, so I'm sure you are familiar with each of the topics, and must have done a good job out there in written ability section as well. So let's understand quickly before we talk about the cutoffs. Let's first understand what happened in each of these sections. That's very important. So first is reading comprehension, as we all know. So unlike most of the other examinations, symbiosis does not have a verbal ability section per se or a general English section as such, but it has a reading comprehension section out there actually. So nothing different I could say out here in this particular section. It was exactly on the expected lines, and having written earlier symbiosis examination and appearing for the exam yesterday as well. So I could clearly say, based on my experience of the previous years, the section was very easy, similar to what I expected, similar to what used to happen in the previous years actually. So there were no surprises at all. And considering the mode of the examination, which was online, I never expected the passages to be quite big. So the passages at max were medium length size actually. So to adapt to the new conditions, to adapt to the new structure of the paper, proportionately the number of reading comprehension passages were reduced to 3. So if, all the 3 days we had 3 passages, each passage having 5 questions, so a total of 15 questions were there. The best part about this particular section for all of you is I'm sure even those who are not writing SLAT, but the people I'm addressing right now, all of you are definitely appearing for the CLAT paper. And having known that CLAT this year will be about reading comprehension, in fact, the entire paper would be comprehension based, passage based. You have practiced a lot and become really comfortable with this one particular area. If I were to talk about reading comprehension, I'm sure all of you are really comfortable with this particular section. And especially if I look at the context of symbiosis examinations, SLAT, then questions have always been direct, which was the story this year as well. So we had direct fact-based questions actually. Even the vocab-based questions, first day we had some synonym antonym kind of questions. So even if I look at the vocabulary based questions which were asked through the passages, they were all contextual actually. So the did not require any prior knowledge. One could have easily gone back to the passage in the context of that particular word you being asked as part of the question. One could have easily figured out what could be the possible meaning or the opposite meaning as the question asked was all about actually. So overall, to sum up, reading comprehension was one of the most easiest section in the paper actually. Each one of you I have interacted with, most of the students I've been interacting with over the period of 3 days, they were really comfortable with this particular section. So as I said, with CLAT preparation in full swing, I don't see any problem. I never expected any problem for this particular section. But still, I would sum up, given the time management factor, given the home proctored format, actually, I would say an attempt of 12 to 13 can be considered really good on all 3 days, actually. So that was about reading comprehension. So let's move on to the other section and understand what was there in store for you. Legal reasoning was again on the expected lines. So there was a mix of legal knowledge and reasoning actually. But 3-4 questions every day were on legal knowledge actually. Not difficult except for 1 or 2 questions across the 3 days. If one would have, if one studied well, if one had practiced well about legal knowledge, actually one have read through it, that shouldn't be a concern actually. But overall, this section was again pretty easier, and every day I could sense there were at least 4 to 5 questions where there were no principle. That was the minimum I'm talking about. So there were no principles given. They were more of a situation exercise. A situation was given and you had to analyze the situation. So technically, if I look at those questions, prior knowledge of law as such was not required. But if you had gone through the concepts of law which are taught in the class, maybe related to contracts, torts, or criminal law, I'm sure you wouldn't have faced any problem at all. In fact, so this you could have done probably in 15 seconds, 30 seconds time frame actually. So as again previous years, if I look at the previous year's paper, quite a number of questions were from the concepts taught in the class of contract actually. So we had questions based on proposal, acceptance in the same form actually. Uh, Talking about people of unsound mind getting into a contract. So quite a number of questions were from the area of contract actually. Overall, an easy section, did not require much prior knowledge of law, but that was definitely helpful if you have already prepared for it. And as I said, all of you are preparing for CLAT examination. So this section was again a walkthrough actually, I would say. But still, I would say considering the legal questions on 1 or 2 days across. So I'm giving possibly an attempt of 11-12 to be considered a good attempt. On a score of 11 and 12, I would say would be considered definitely a good score in this particular section. Okay, so moving on, quickly looking at the analytical reasoning section. Now, this section, for some of you who did not attend my ANARC's previous session on SLAT strategy, would definitely have found it to be a bit of surprise, because probably then you would not have been expecting that this section always had maths question actually. But this is a story which is not new actually. Every year, I think I've been always surprised why this happens in symbiosis paper actually. So when we talk about the analytical reasoning section, always every year we have questions based on the concepts of mathematics, typically arithmetic, but then we do have. So the story was no different this year. We had questions on elementary mathematics based from arithmetic. In fact, on the first day we had questions on number system as well. So and then we had questions on from different concepts. We had puzzles, we had series based questions, we had calendars based questions. Today clock based questions were also there actually, but none of them were as such difficult actually. So, and given the time which I consider is good enough to do this paper actually, if I look at the overall paper, probably one could have finished, if one had prepared well, one could have finished it roughly around 58-60 minutes. So the time is never a constraint in this symbiosis paper, the analytical reasoning section, except for that surprise element for some of you who were not expecting the questions based on mathematics area. So otherwise this section was again quite easy actually all across the 3 days. I couldn't come across a candidate who said the reasoning sections were difficult actually. In fact, both the reasoning section, analytical and logical, were quite easy actually. So some of the questions did took some time, some of the puzzles, and one of the common elements was if I talk about yesterday's paper and today's paper, one of the questions, like yesterday, one of the family tree question, the the conditions given were same actually, and if one could figure it out quickly, he was not supposed to, or he or she was not supposed to make the charts once again actually. So there were 3 questions based on the same conditions, but they were not in the same order actually. So after a gap of few questions, you could find another questions based on the same puzzle actually. So there were quite a few candidates who actually solved it once again before realizing that it's the same set of conditions which were given in the previous question actually. If I could go back to the screen 2 questions prior to what I'm solving right now, I could find the same condition actually over there. But overall, an easy section could have been attempted in 13-14 minutes easily actually. Again, given the condition of the examination, the format of the examination, I'm putting my bet that 11 to 12 can be considered a really good score in this particular section. One would definitely fetch that much of score. Most of you would definitely be getting that kind of score. Your overall analytical reasoning section was quite easier actually. Based on the same lines, logical reasoning section, technically we always expect logical reasoning sections to have more questions coming from the critical reasoning part, but as far as symbiosis exams are concerned, logical reasoning section always been a mix of analytical reasoning based questions as well. Typically 50% of this particular section has always been about concepts from analytical reasoning. So we expect series based question, we expect puzzles out here, we expect questions based on coding, decoding, clocks and calendars. So all this were there, so there was no surprise as such. Obviously, we had questions based on reason, assertions, statement, conclusions out there from critical reasoning section. Typically, syllogisms was missing across. If I look at the overall summary of the paper across the 3 days, syllogisms was typically missing across. Visual reasoning questions were there in the paper actually. For some, it were challenging actually. Those who are not really familiar with the concept of visual reasoning, those images, so they might have faced certain issues. The idea would have been to probably skip those questions and rather put that time to other questions which could have definitely solved. So again, just like the previous 3 sections, whether I talk about reading comprehension, whether I talk about analytical reasoning or legal reasoning, logical reasoning section also turned out to be quite easier actually. Similarly, like the other 3 sections, I expect a score of 11 and 12. Anywhere around 11, 12 can be considered a good score for this particular section. I believe the surprise element in the paper was general awareness section. Now, as a CLAT aspirants, we put a lot of effort when it comes to general awareness and current affairs actually. And most of us, in fact, given an opportunity, we start our paper with general knowledge section because we are pretty confident because of the preparation we have done for CLAT paper. So most of the other exams seems to be pretty easy as compared to the CLAT paper actually. So most of us are comfortable and we tend to start our paper with GK section. But contrary to the previous years, this year the GK section was slightly, I would say, on a different note, I would say, full of surprises, no doubt. So I would not say because it was a static GK, which was a surprise element. Static GK has always been there in the SLAT paper. So when we talk about general knowledge section as part of the SLAT paper, static GK has always been around 50% to 60%, sometimes even 60% actually. So that is not the surprise element. But if I look at the questions from the static GK, they were more in the context of the current affairs actually. So they had some kind of connect with the current affairs. Just like, if I recall correctly, just like 2019 CLAT paper actually. So wherein even the 4 static GK questions had some bit of connect with current affairs actually. So same story happened here with the general awareness section when it comes to the SLAT paper, SLAT 2020. So we had static GK questions out here. For some, they were the surprise element, but I could see most of the questions of static GK had definitely some connect with current affairs. In fact, I would strongly say day 2 seemed a bit easy, though not a very different story altogether, but day 2, as far as GK section is concerned, was quite easy actually. But we must understand the cutoffs would be declared considering all the 3 slots. So the performance of the candidates who appeared for the exam on 26th of July, they will also consider the performance of the candidates who appeared on 27th and 28th July. So it's not like that they are going to release individual cutoffs for each day. So more or less, I see the difficulty level being quite consistent across the 3 days. So whatever moderation they have planned for the overall 3 days of normalization process they have planned, but there would be a single cutoff coming across each 3 days actually. It won't be like 3 days of 3 different cutoffs actually. But considering the overall performance of the candidates in the GK section, the element of surprise in the paper, I would say a score of 9 to 10 can be considered really good in this particular section. For some, definitely they would have done a better job, probably might be expecting anywhere around 12, 13 as well. But if I look at from the overall perspective, I expect somewhere around 9 to 10 can be considered a really good score actually. So before I sum up everything as far as the uh, cutoffs is concerned, because all this scores would definitely sum up to a particular score and that can be considered as a cutoff. But when we talk about cutoffs, a lot of factors come into play. The number of candidates who have applied to the respective symbiosis law schools, the intake of each of the law schools. So these two are these two are definitely the factors to determine the cutoff as well, because there is a ratio to which the number of candidates would be called for each of the campuses for the personal interview. So exactly what could be the ratio this year, considering that the personal interview is expected to be done in a online format. So you'll be sitting at your home and giving the personal interview. So I'm still waiting for the clarity to come from the respective symbiosis law schools as to how many the number of candidates can be accommodated. But typically the ratio has been 1:4. So for example, if I talk about the total intake of symbiosis law school Pune, so they have an intake of 300, 180 across BLLB and 120 across BBLLB. So typically they were calling a total of 1200 students. So the ratio used to maintain was 1:4, and that was typical for all the symbiosis law schools. But this time, given the situation, the way the PI has to be conducted, I'm sure either they would maintain the same ratio, or probably it might come down 1:3 is what my expectation is actually. So probably Symbiosis Law School might give a call to around 700, 800, or maybe at maximum 900 students as such. So that's my expectation. So before I come to the cutoff and summarize the entire paper, let me quickly take you through the VAT process, because this will be important. This will be important, no doubt. So what's going to happen? How the merit list will be drawn? I'm coming to that shortly, but before that, let's understand the process of written ability test. So each of the day we had two different topics being given to the student. The total time allotted was 30 minutes. But right now, this particular section is not going to be evaluated. This is not going to be evaluated. This will be evaluated. Your performance in written ability test will be evaluated only if you have cleared the cutoff of the MCQ section. So once you have cleared the cutoff of the MCQ section, then your performance in the writing ability test, written ability test will be evaluated, and the final merit list will be drawn basis your performance in the written examination, the MCQ part, your scores in the VAT segment, and your personal interview, your performance in the personal interview. So that would be a very holistic approach when the final merit list will be drawn, and that will be drawn from among the candidates who will be shortlisted for the personal interview. Only their SS will be evaluated actually. But if I look at the topics across the 3 days, I don't see there were much of a challenge actually, considering the law aspirants, the level of preparedness, they put the level of effort you guys put in across each of the areas, current affairs, legal. I don't think these topics were any sort of a problem for any student across the country actually. So you do have data. COVID is something like which was a topic today, post-COVID scenario, so you're familiar with that. Social media, we all know actually, even in previous years, Symbiosis has been talking about social media as such. So, and the best part was you are not supposed to write on both the topics actually. So you had ample time. 30 minutes was a good enough time to put down your thoughts on the screen actually. So overall, VAT also turned out to be quite easier. If you are familiar with, if you're a good reader, I'm sure you would have done definitely a good job. So that was overall summary of the paper across the 3 days. So I'm sure there were some students who could not attempt the paper. Symbiosis will definitely look into the problems. If they were genuine, actually, they should definitely consider those problems and provide them with some opportunity to appear for the test, maybe providing a different slot. And again, before I come to the cutoffs, my request to all of you would be, when I'm talking about the cutoffs, these are expected cutoffs based on my assessment, our assessment, the team assessment, based on the feedbacks, based on our interaction with the students, large number of students across the 3 days, and how they have performed, the feedback which we have received, the faculty members appearing for the exam. So everything has been taken into consideration, but this shall not become your basis to make any decisions actually. So these are expected cutoffs, might vary a little bit actually. The actual scenario might change, though I don't expect much happening out there actually. But any sort of decision would be yours if you're making basis this cutoff actually. So that's a word of caution from my side. So the one thing which you have been waiting for actually, I would say. So that's our assessment of the cutoff for SLAT 2020 across each of the campuses. Obviously, if I look at each of the categories, that would vary, that would completely vary. But if I look at overall performance of the students, overall feedback of the students for typically for a general category students, that's what our expectation is. So SLS Pune, I believe the cutoff should be around 57, 58, or 59. That's our assessment actually for the BLLB program. BLLB tracks maximum number of applications for Symbiosis Law School Pune, and definitely the cutoffs go on the higher side. Intake is also higher in this program. For BBLLB, I expect the cutoffs to be in the range of 53 to 55. As far as Symbiosis Noida is concerned, the BLLB cutoff expectation is somewhere around 52, 54. Similarly, for BBLLB, it could be anywhere around 49 to 51. My belief is it should be somewhere around 51 at least, actually. On a similar lines, SLS Hyderabad should be around 50, 49 to 51 is the range I'm putting my bet on. For BBLLB should be around 46, 47. Considering the domicile factor for Symbiosis Nagpur as well, and considering that as part of my overall assessment, I believe 45, 46 would be a good score for SLS Nagpur BLLB program actually. Of course, it may slightly change on the upside. I don't expect much on the downside actually. It might go up a little bit actually, but that's the overall assessment of ours. And typically looking at SLS Pune and Noida, which most of you would have definitely applied for, and SLS Hyderabad definitely. So that's the range of for both the programs I'm putting my bet on. So 57 to 59 is something I expect would be the cutoff for BLLB program at Symbiosis Law School Noida. So again, a word of caution: these are expected cutoffs. These are expected cutoffs based on assessment, feedback, students' feedback actually on a large scale, but might change plus minus here and there, plus minus point or two might happen actually. But overall, if I have to sum up the Symbiosis examination, quite an easy paper on the expected lines, no surprises as such. So cutoffs generally has been on the higher side for Symbiosis all the time because of two factors. One, the paper has always been easy, and this second factor is there's no negative marking. So I'm sure most of you would have definitely attempted all 75 of it. So you then generally expect those 1 or 2 point additions happening. Some of your clues might definitely work for you actually. So considering all that, that's our expectation of the cutoffs for the year 2020. Might change. So okay, so time to take up question and answers from the people attending. So if you have any specific questions related to the exam, Symbiosis examination, please feel free to put that in the chat box, either on the YouTube where you are there, or in the Zoom if you're attending out there. Please feel free to put that on the chat box. Okay, so there is a question related to the interview. So don't worry, we'll do a session on interview very soon. Actually, we'll do a personal interview strategy session. But generally, Symbiosis interview is more of a personal interaction, more of the personal interaction actually. So you have those typical questions like who are you, basically the starting question, and then you expect questions based on your family or academic background, and definitely from the field of law and GK. So it's an overall mix of goes around for 10-12 minutes actually on the maximum side, but very easy. It would feel like we are interacting with somebody on the other side of the room actually. That's nothing to worry about. One of the chats which I'm coming across all the time is that what about the cheats? They would definitely put the cutoffs on the higher side. See, as I said in the beginning, don't worry about that. Things will be taken care of. SLAT has been putting this all across. They'll definitely take care of this stuff. But then, see, when you are talking about cheating, you need to realize that that would have wasted a lot of time for many people. So I don't think they would have been able to attempt maximum number of questions actually. So don't worry about that. Okay, so the PI call will be shortlisted based on cutoffs or the assessment of WAC. The PI call will be based on the assessment of the MCQ paper, and only those who get the call, for them the VAT section will be evaluated. So your cutoffs will be for the MCQ paper, not the VAT section. And all those students who clear the cutoff for the MCQ section, they will move to the they will definitely be attempting the personal interview part. They will be part of the PI, and for them only the evaluation will be done for the VAT section actually. So English is mandatory in PI. Yes, the language expected is English. Actually, for some of the question, depending if the interviewer is asking you the question in Hindi, you can definitely reply. But yes, you are expected, a future law student where the medium of learning is English. You are expected to have the interview in English only. Actually, will this lecture be available? This will be available on YouTube. That's being beamed live over there as well. Okay. So typically, if you talk about personal interview, the questions are: tell me about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your interest. The questions related to the subjects you have studied in class 12. So if you're a commerce student, expect a couple of questions coming from business studies or economics. And then definitely you can expect a few questions based on certain areas of law, the one which you are familiar with, concepts of contract, culpable homicide. These are frequently asked questions along with current affairs definitely. So they want to definitely understand whether you keep an eye on what's happening around actually. So by 7th of August, we expect the results to be announced for this particular stage of the selection process, and then probably after 10th only the personal interview process will start. So that's my expectation. Okay. No, the cutoff. So one of the typical questions which has always been, will this cutoff will come down after the interview? No, this will be considered for final selection only. So only one cutoff will be announced, and those who make it to the next stage, which is personal interview, they will be only considered for the final admission process actually. Typically, Symbiosis law entrance examination is taken by roughly around 16,000, 17,000 students. So yeah, that's the overall competition we are talking about. Yes, the marks of the VAT will be added to the overall results for those students who have been shortlisted after the cutoffs have been declared for the MCQ paper, not for everyone. There is no concept of tiebreaker in Symbiosis. If they decide the cutoff to be, let's say, 55 for any of the programs, anybody who scores 55 and above will get a call, provided that person has also applied to that institution. That's very important to understand. If you have not applied to the institution separately, you'll, even if you have done well, even if you go on to score 75 out of 75, you will not be considered for admissions. You will not be getting a call. 300, 350 word is good enough considering the time limit was 30 minutes. So that's a good good that would be a good length of the passage, I would say. So cutoff is already there on the screen. So I'm sure you are looking at that. So the cutoff is already there on the screen. See, it will depend how many people will get the call for the interviews. Because, as I said, normally the ratio maintained has always been 1:4. So, depending on the total number of seats by a particular institution, 4 times the number of candidates are called. But considering the current situation, the way the the situation we are living in, probably I believe that big number would not be possible. So, ratio probably could be 1:3. That's my expectation. As far as other examinations are concerned, when we talk about AILET, CLAT, as of now, CLAT definitely stands on 22nd of August. AILET has become more of speculative actually because of the note they released yesterday, the instruction they released yesterday. So everybody is now speculating. Let them come with a formal announcement whether the exam has also been postponed or whether they were referring to the activities related to admit card or a dry run for the examination, conducting a mock for the examination. So things are not clear as of now. Hopefully, probably in another couple of days, ILET will come out with a detailed notification and give us a clarity about the same actually. So Uh, MHCET, no formal date has been announced actually as of now. So just wait and watch. Hopefully, I believe, given the conditions in Mumbai right now, I'm sure they will not be doing it anytime soon actually, unless they also decide to go ahead with the proctored mode. But then this year they have already received more than 22,000 applications. So I believe they would prefer doing it at a center. But in that case, nothing can happen before middle of September actually, because August, considering the overall scenario in COVID scenario in Mumbai, I don't think conducting the same in August would be feasible actually. Large number of candidates will definitely be from Maharashtra. So if you're a PCM student, your interview would be very much similar to any other group student, but definitely when it comes to questions based on academics, you can definitely expect questions based on your background of physics and chemistry or mathematics even actually. Okay, so guys, this session was meant to be a symbiosis analysis. I'm sure you have understood the overall selection process and the cutoffs, the expected cutoffs. So I would take your leave for today. Actually, all those students who also appeared for the symbiosis BBA examination or appearing for the BBA examination today or tomorrow, you are most welcome to join me at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow for the set B paper analysis. So tomorrow the exam gets over around 5 p.m. We'll be coming out with the comprehensive analysis for the BBA exam being conducted by Symbiosis tomorrow at 6:30. Thank you so much for joining in. All the best from Team Career Launcher, Team LST. All the best to everyone. Go ahead and start your preparation now in full swing for AILT and CLAT. Thank you so much.